Hello and welcome back to another piece of high quality paper content here on the Rad Nauseam YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by one of the people responsible for the best LGS in Melbourne, the absolute legend, Trent Clark. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I am excellent. I'm currently in the middle of my first break, my first holiday since opening POG. I've had nearly 2 weeks off and I'm about as refreshed and reverberated as what I can be. So I'm actually really happy to be here and talk about green-white artifacts, green-white
Man,
shops.
I'm excited to hear about your take on this deck. So we got the this green white. So you were telling me the other day that it's got some cool answers to things. It plays a bit differently from traditional sort of blue bots. Tell us about it. What's going on?
Well, I have been of the opinion for a while. I've played a lot of shops. I think I've probably played the second most amount of shops in the Highlander format to I'll never try and say that I played more than Tom because that's a lie. Uh, but I've just tried to draw some pretty deep conclusions that a lot of the colorless stuff is just not necessary and pretty low powered after you get to 52, 53, 51 cards in your deck. Uh, I've tried to try and exploit that by making the deck a little bit more consistent. It's interesting because it's also contradictive by diluting the mana base to add kind of like a green core to play cards like Once Upon a Time and Ancient Stirrings and Sowing Microsynth. Uh, Everybody knows how incredibly powerful all three of these cards are. They've been in standard decks ever since they've all ever been printed. Microsynth's one of the best things you can be doing in modern. Ancient Stirrings has been in Tron the entire time. Once Upon a Time is completely busted. Um, and then since the printing of Tezzeret, actually adding Portable Hull as a way to kind of circumvent a few issues that this deck can have. Main deck, mainly and only Psychic Frog, being the only card you actually care about from like Grixis / blue-black hybrid decks for the most part. And then also upgrading that sideboard package, which is just Carpet of Flowers, Choke, Swords to Plowshares, Rest in Peace. These completely unreasonable sideboard cards that can just determine matches for, one piece of cardboard.
Yeah, that's awesome. The introduction of Carpet of Flowers and Choke, is that not something that I guess for Eldrazi perhaps they might be doing that. So I guess there's some things that about the Eldrazi deck. I know you were playing it very briefly, but you went back to playing bots. I believe at the time you told me it was just a better deck. So were those sort of things that you've brought into the deck, things that you found were like exciting about the Eldrazi, or is this sort of just a different take altogether?
Certainly good in Eldrazi. I mean, I've got on record to say that Eldrazi is just completely unplayable, and I stand by it, especially in Melbourne in our meta. It's different, obviously, in other parts of Australia, but down here where it's colder, it's a joke. Like we have three storm players, two storm players every weekly. We have a bunch of people that really enjoy recurring wasteland and strip mine, and Eldrazi, for lack of a better term, can't participate in those worlds. Whereas this deck can, and this deck can compete on a pretty strong axis in regards to fast mana, uh, good aggression, good disruption, and also just the similar addition of what we're talking about with the green cards of Choke, Carpet to kind of solidify or upgrade percentages, or even bit of Rocky Balboa where you start with a left hook because you're this shops deck, and then post board you bought out a bunch of artifacts, you bought in a bunch of hammers, and the null rods, the energy fluxes, the seeds to innocences aren't nearly as effective because you're playing with your right hand instead of your left hand.
Yeah, definitely. I've had the pleasure of playing against you when having three null rods in play still still resulted in a loss. So it's cool to see how the deck can sort of adapt. And I think that was something that was really interesting about the Eldrazi list was like how do you sideboard against them? A lot of people were just bringing in these just nonsense cards because null rods and collector roofs and stuff didn't sort of impact them. So I guess that's just a really interesting take on bots, and I'm keen to see how that plays out in our game.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed working on the deck for what it's worth. It's um, Shops as a archetype as a deck is just it's psychotic. It's psychotic in nature. It's just like it drives you insane. It can never be perfect. It can always be better. You see like Grixis players tinkering over like the last 4-drop or the swamp versus the blood crypt versus the the third
Surveil land or whatever
surveil land or
nonsense.
whatever.
Yeah, trying to get those percentage points.
And it's the same kind of like psychotic energy that this deck brings. Is sorry, I know you want to start, but quick funny one. We had a breakup at Pog just last week, and one of my the co-owners, Scott Munro, he's like, "Oh, can I play your deck?" And he's a Grixis player, and I said, "Very careful, dude." He's like, "Why?" I said, "Because once you pick that up, there's no like your perspective on the world changes." And he played like 2 games after it, and he's like, "You know what? You're right."
He's
And
ordered his Mishra's Workshop.
I seen him today. He posted like on Facebook, and he's like tagged me in a post. He said, "Is this a good price for a workshop?" I
Yeah,
shit you not.
yeah. He's been brown pilled.
Yeah,
That's
brown pilled
exciting.
is a good way of putting it.
All right, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you're having fun with it and that you're converting more people to playing it because it definitely doesn't represent a huge part of the meta game here in Melbourne. And recently at Canberra, I don't think it really showed up any numbers there either. Do you think that's because of like how expensive it is to get a workshop, or do you think that's kind of got something to do with the deck's power level or perceived power level?
I think it's just a different way of playing Magic. I think that a lot of people conceptually really are attracted to vintage, legacy, high-powered, older formats because of cards like Brainstorm, Ponder, Thoughtseize, Underground Sea. And like these cards are super awesome to play with, and a lot of people find a lot of skill and passion in casting these cards, and can always kind of work out problems to solutions to problems on the board state or any matchup because these things give you such an incredible width to choose from when it comes to card selection and what cards you're putting in your deck, how many cards you see a game. Shops doesn't play that way. Shops is completely different. A lot of your decisions are made in your in your mulligan decisions. Your cards aren't expendable, so to speak. Like you're trying to extract 110% from some cards that just aren't worth a card. Cards like Night Scythe in Highlander are a bit of a joke, right? But they serve their purpose in shops because they tap for Gaia's Cradle, because they tap for Tolarian Academy, because they turn on Metalcraft uh, for one card plus the Mox Opal or whatever. So it's a different, like I said, it touched on a few times. It's a different concept, a different ideology of how to play this deck, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of getting it right.
Yeah, I think like going really deep on synergy is something that can be kind of hard to do in a singleton format, which is probably why these sort of Grixis decks are so popular, is because it's very easy to have a consistent game plan by, yeah, like you said, all the cantrips, they make games feel kind of samey. You can kind of get a lot of reps in. Whereas a deck like bots, it does seem like there's a lot of thought that has to go into every hand you get because your game plan is going to be different every time.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And also, I think to touch back on what you're saying, like not many people want to play shops. Obviously, the price is up an issue with actually getting some of the select cards to play with to start with. But also, people hate like Chalice of Void and Trinisphere. Like you have to be some kind of psycho to really enjoy playing these cards. And I am that person. I absolutely love putting a Trinisphere into play and watching my opponents just hate me for it.
Yeah, I
Like, I
think
hate it.
decks where you're forcing your opponents to think differently about how they're going to approach the game is one of my favorite things about these kind of formats, is when you can find a deck that you enjoy playing but also sort of gives you an advantage of making your opponents uncomfortable. There's a lot of equity to be gained there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Also, to shops has one of those kind of innate things where you can also just you can have hands that just win. Storm can kill you on turn 0. Your Thoracle can have hands where it kills you on turn 2, turn 3 with but the game's figuratively over from drawing 7 cards. Shops also has that, and that's a huge draw to these high power formats where sometimes in a tournament you might just get handed 2 free games because you open with a shop and a Trinisphere, or you open with a shop and a Candelabra and a Mox Opal, and it doesn't really matter because you just get a couple of wins. And in a tournament such as Highlander, in a format such as Highlander, those kind of things add up a lot.
Yeah, but getting to the end of the day when you've had some free wins to sort of like rest and refresh, definitely a lot of percentage points that you're getting from being able to approach your next game with some thought and care. All right, and here we have bots versus Dimir Moons. We've got the wonderful Trent on the play versus Cody. Cody's deck list is in the description and is also in our previous video of Jund versus Blue Moon, or as I like to call it, Hot Rock. But here we are with an interesting start, putting away the Sundering Titan. This land is, I always think it's gone. The card is gone when you start with this land, but you can just pick it up later.
Yeah, it's an interesting land in the deck. It kind of comes back to those deck building restrictions and constrictions in like how many 7s and 8s do you want to play to utilize this? Do you want to play 4? Do you want to play 3? Do you want to play 2? But when it pays off, it obviously, as we can see now, it's really paying off.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you said, like if you can get into the spot where you put an academy into play and later on you just pick up the Titan, it's, the Titan has effectively generated you X amount of mana, where X is the extra pip for Ugin's Labyrinth, and then that cost reduction comes into play, right? So instead of it costing 8, it costs 6 or 5 or how many times you tapped it. Really strong in a certain set of stances. It's a little worrying in this matchup because you're specifically playing into Harbinger and things like that.
Yeah.
But
But being
yeah,
able to sort of like have a hand where in some decks, like opening with an Atraxa or something in your hand, you're like, this is essentially a mulligan. But with a land like this Ugin's Labyrinth, you can just tuck the nonsense card under it that you're not going to use for 4 or 5 turns. Have it do something else is like it's cool. And so you've gone, you started off at the races very quickly this game.
yeah. So I knew I was playing against Moons. I've played against Cody a few times. I played against this matchup a little bit. And so one of the things that I would generally like to do is I'd actually like to play the Patchwork before I play the Candle, to try and eke out that point of power. However, I believe that Cody is a person who knows kind of what hand he's looking for, and it's a quintessential perfect keep from him in terms of the 4 cards you can see, right? Turn 1 Interruption, turn 2 Psychic Frog. I've gone on to say that Psychic Frog is legitimately the only card I care about in this matchup. I don't want to see it on turn 2. I don't want to see it ever. But my idea is, especially with the hand, if you see the hand is Sundering Titan, 4 lands, Candelabra, Patchwork. So if I play the Candelabra and I play the Patchwork, sure, I miss that point. But if he Inquisition Stresses Thoughtseizes me, he effectively discards a card. That's his turn, and he misses. And that's quintessentially exactly what happened, where he Inquisitions me, he sees nothing. I'm lucky enough to draw the Walking Ballista for the turn after. So obviously, like turn 1, 4 mana, turn 2, 6 mana, turn 3, I believe, is 7 mana. So I've done exactly what the Shops deck kind of wants to do in terms of, played 3 turns, generated 15 mana or however much, and made it really, really hard for Cody to do it. All around, like helping to play around that Inquisition as well.
Yeah, dodging the Inquisition is big game because your hand doesn't do a lot without that Patchwork in play. So making the gamble of like, I'm just gonna put it out into play straight away so that I can, like, you're gonna dodge every removal spell for the, it's got Ward 2, right? It's just gonna
Yeah, what
dodge
do? Yep.
it's gonna dodge all removal for the next 3 or 4 turns, and it's also going to be immune from discards. It's pretty hard for him to deal with, and I guess against his deck being on the play, you kind of want to get out the gates early and just start pressuring the life total before he can get established. Is that sort of how you felt about the hand that you kept, like what your game plan was?
Yeah, look, it had a lot of mana, right? It had a lot of mana. it has a lot of mana and it has a patchwork, so it has a plan one way or the other. I can either draw into artifacts, which gives me aggression, or we can go big with this Candelabra, Ancient Tomb, Ugin's Labyrinth hand. So theoretically, it's kind of like the perfect storm for what I want to do in this matchup. Because if he has the Force of Will for the patchwork, I can back it up with a lot of mana. And if he has if he's on the Harbinger plan, well, I've already got a clock.
Yeah, it's him being on 9 life this early in the game is pretty sketch, and I can see like discarding cards individually to the frog to make it sort of difficult for you to shoot it to death with the massive walking blister.
Yeah, it's a really interesting spot. That's why I tanked on the last turn, because I really wasn't sure as to how Cody was going to go about playing defense. I was pretty confident that he was going to block and have to give up some cards, but preserve the life total. The fact that he didn't was like somewhat concerning in the fact that I thought his hand was going to be a lot better than what it was, based on the premise that I didn't like if he's planning to attack me, which means that he's going to have like 2 to 3 forms of interaction. But that didn't seem to be the case in that he had a Gataxian Probe and a Preordain, both of which he could have cast. Like we could have paid 2 life and cast a Gataxian Probe to maybe see something else. And then also obviously the little bit of a dance there where it's like attack, block, removing counters from Ballista in response to the cards, but Cody just didn't actually want to participate in that. And unfortunately, in that last turn, he hasn't played a lot of limited lately and just left himself dead on board to
hasn't
like
done
5
the
power
combat
plus
math.
block the Ballista.
Yeah, that's it's a bit. How's it going? But you'll remember for the next game for sure. And so you're on a Malta 4 here. Interesting. How does, when you're sort of choosing, obviously you said the mulligans are very important. How often do you find yourself mulliganing this low in the deck?
More than any other deck, for sure. 4 is very, very low, but the deck can win on 4. I'm comfortable being there. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't mind mulliganing to 4 because that's a lot of what the deck does. I wish we had the actual clip where I mulliganed my 7, because the 7 was actually super interesting in that it was the natural Tron, the Ugin 7, and I think it was like Urza's Saga and something else, and I just was not sure whether that was the keep or to keep or mulligan. I ended up shipping it back because I thought, if there's interaction, obviously I'm on the draw. If there's interaction with Thoughtseize Consign or like a back to basics Harbinger, Sinkhole, that kind of interaction, it makes it really
slow.
difficult. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Even
though
it's very powerful, you're just sort of not doing anything for the first few turns, and then you're under a moon, and it doesn't matter what kind of lens you had. Yeah, I could see that being like a worthwhile mulligan. You mentioned when I sat down next to you this night when we were playing that you'd I'm Alta 4 in a game that I was playing, and you said I can win those. I was like,
yeah, 100%.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've seen you do it a number of times. So like the deck seems pretty resilient to those mulligans if you get the correct pieces. And you mentioned that you like the green-white variant of this deck, you've got some cool sideboard things that you've got planned for these sort of blue-black Grixis matchups. So you brought in, I'm assuming, Choke, Carpet of Flowers. What else have you brought in?
So bringing rest in peace as well, as these decks operate from the graveyard in terms of like Murderous Cut, Gomag Angler, Tasiga, and then usually like Murktide region if they're 8 points, plus reanimate, animate dead, all that bushlucker. And then I bought in Dismember and Swords to Plowshares because of Tamio / Psychic Frog. Tamio is not very, you don't worry too much about Tamio in the first game, but game 2 it's better because obviously they have that interaction with like that they can play hands off better because keepings off, sorry, because their hands get a lot better. They get a lot more action with Ceremonious Rejection and Consign Memory and things like that. So I want to interact with them a little bit more in terms of Dismember and Swords to Plowshares. Lantern of the Lost is just an easy sideboard out of one of the other 1-mana artifacts that I'd be playing. I believe at this time it's just Candelabra of Tornos, which is obviously not great against when all your lands are islands. And basically you're just taking out low-powered artifacts or artifacts that don't do anything in the matchup. So Walking Ballista doesn't have a lot of targets. Khan the Great Creator, obviously no impact outside of resolving into getting Mycosynth Lattice, but again, not where you want to be in this matchup, especially on the draw. Sundering Titan, he's 2 colors. I might have a bunch of islands, doesn't really work. Forsaken Monument, again, not really where the matchup's at. The +2, the power and toughness doesn't really matter. All my stuff's islands. My stuff doesn't untap. It's cool if it generates more mana, but doesn't. And then just like Candle, Jeweled Amulet, and Khan Versa. So yeah, Carpet Choke, Rest in Peace, Dismember, Land of the Lost, Swords, and Witch Enchanter. So a pretty large sideboard in on the draw. And then, yeah, boarding out those cards that I mentioned.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense to sort of board out the cards that maybe are part of your game plan for game one. I imagine against a number of decks where you're just trying to be as unfair as possible as you can in the game one to sort of see if you can cheese out a win before they put in their collector roofs and stuff. But as soon as those cards come in, drawing a card like Candelabra, I imagine, would just feel like an absolute dick punch when they've got a collector roof in play and you've got a bunch of islands.
Yeah, especially on the draw. These cards just don't... You can make an argument that, you know, against back to basics or whatever, Candle can do some things, you know, in the long term if the game slows down. But it's a bit of a pipe dream, and the inconsistencies I found the inconsistencies to be a little bit too much, as opposed to something like Vexing Bauble, Lantern of the Lost, where you can just kind of get your money, you get your bag on the way in, or they do something, and then you get your card on the way out. Which, if you look at kind of the way I've sideboarded with like the interaction pieces, the Carpet, the Choke, the Rest in Peace, I'm trying to play a longer game as it is, rather than just trying to kill my opponent 3 turns like I did in game 1.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense, and yeah, I think something that is interesting with these sort of bots Eldrazi decks, they kind of the workshop decks, they don't have a huge amount of basics. So how many basics do you think
Just
is
the one.
like sort of necessary? Just the one? Would you ever go up to 2 or 3, or do you think 1 is the sweet spot?
You get a lot of utility from your lands. I get less utility from my lands than the colorless versions, because I'm giving up some of the worser utility lands in like Secluded Starforge and Fountain Port and things like that for the colors to play these more powerful sideboard cards. I could see a world in which I'm supposed to be sideboarding a Plains or a second Forest, but the deck also has pretty reasonable ways of generating excess mana around Harbinger of the Tides and back to basics and things like that, in the form of like Mox Opal, Talismans, and I found it to not be too bad.
Yeah, I imagine when you have things like Swords to Plowshares, Dismember, Portable Hole, etc., that playing the games versus the oofs and the null rods, that it doesn't actually, you're more worried about like the Harbinger, I guess, or the back to basics specifically, as it sort of dodges those mentioned removal spells. So back to basics being like the card you don't want to see the most, but everything else your deck does have answers to.
Yeah, for sure. Going into post-board matchups, you still do have a few things with back to basics, but obviously it just, yeah, you shit not up tapping is a real problem.
Yeah, definitely.
It just sucks. Like it sucks when you've got 7s and 8s in your deck and you can't actually do anything.
And is this Barrowglyph? You said only Psychic Frog you really care about. Does the life swing from the Barrowglyph drag out the game a bit too long for you sometimes, or is this another card you just don't really care about?
It's definitely a good one. But to say that Barrowglyph isn't one of the best cards in the format, one of the best creatures in the format, one of the best roadblocks in the format for specifically for like the aggro or just the mid-range plan to the shops is true.
Be a lie. It would be a lie to say it's not good.
It's fundamentally a very powerful card. But it's not as bad as I just haven't found it to be nearly as problematic as Psychic Frog. I
Yeah,
can block
for
this.
sure.
I can block this thing all day, and then if I can get into a spot where Sundering Titan or Ugin or something is in play, something gets resolved. You can be on 40 life. You can be on 50 life. It's as long as you don't get ahead in card advantage so severely.
Yeah. Yeah, I
That's
think the being
where I
able to
want to be.
chump it a few times. But I think the interesting pickup here from your Urza Saga is getting this Relic of Progenitus. The fact that it does exile itself as well as both graveyards is really good against the Baraglyph. It sort of like says you can't really attack because there's some artifacts that you'll sack to exile a graveyard or whatever, but they leave themselves in the bin, like a Nihil Spellbomb or something, which you'll be like, oops, actually, this Sparaglyph is still got one point of power, which is enough to kill your dude.
Yeah, so I had to make an interesting play here in that obviously I actually made a slight error here where I relicked him in my turn, and that was actually incorrect. I should have actually just held up relic here to target myself and exile my Urza Saga, because my game plan here was to basically I have to block the Baraglyph and let damage resolve. Ideally, I'd like to not let damage resolve and make it a 0/1 and have it die to the Golem, but he also played Prismatic Vista before
Yeah, so it's
the damage,
impossible.
which
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that was absolutely correct, because the other reason that I was respecting it was because of Brazen Borrower. I didn't actually want to get borrowed out of the response.
this is
So
also
I had
an
to let.
incredibly heads up play. Just sorry to interrupt you. When
Go ahead.
marking damage on the Baraglyph and then exiling the graveyards and having it die to combat damage at the end of turn is sick.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it because if you can see, I'm down a lot of cards. Obviously, Saga bought me a bunch of cards. This Ancient Tomb's done good work to keep me in the game. But Cody's hand is stacked. Obviously, doesn't have a board right now. But ideally I'd really like to not let that golem go. But obviously with the prismatic face up, and then the potential of just being blown out by like cycle troll after the relic is gone, just kind of had to
Yeah, definitely.
take my medicine.
Yeah, it's kind of what these blue-black Grixis kind of decks do, and walks too. It's like playing the mid-range game plan. As soon as they start slowly getting the cards, so they have 4, 5, 6 cards in their hands, and you're kind of sitting there going, living off the top of your deck, it gets pretty grim pretty quickly when you're trying to beat that mid-range plan. So yeah, trading resources away like that is, I can see, yeah, you sort of 2-for-1 yourself a little bit, but these are the kind of, like you said, take your medicine. These are the kind of sacrifices you need to make to stay in the game, because if that Baraglyph does connect with you, he's going to draw another card, and then you can kill it next turn, but he's drawn the threat to replace it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And now obviously the mulligan to 4 is coming into play here, where I can't make land drops, I can't multi-spell.
Yeah, definitely.
And one of the patterns that this deck is really trying to get to is so I've used Urza Saga. Now unfortunately I've had to put that Urza Saga in exile, but one of the play patterns for blue black Grixis, those kind of variants, is the combination of Urza Saga and Abstergo Entertainment, and you actively try to play through rebuying the Urza Saga to just put guys in play over turn and turn and turn. So you're actually not, yeah, I get destroyed here. So you're actually not like committing your hand to playing. So as we could see there a lot with Cody, right? Cody had a lot of interaction in the forms of the ceremonious rejection. He's got counterspeller. He's got ceremonious rejection. A lot of the time playing through the Urza Saga, you don't cast spells, and you just play through tapping your mana and using your land base to manipulate the board state, and then you overload them by playing 2 turns, playing 3 turns, but 2 spells, three spells in 1 turn.
Yeah, that's like an interesting thing that you were mentioning about like the Abstergo Entertainment and as a saga, like making 2, as you call them, homies, and then fetching up a Graph Digger's Cage or a graveyard into another graveyard interaction piece, or even like a Shadow Spear or something, and then being able to just like continually generate value in a way that can go over the top of what they're doing as well. Yeah, it's like these kind of things are not like percentage point plays. They're actual game plans that you really need to be like across when you're playing these kind of decks, because yeah, the amount of value that's tacked on to just like generic blue black or red black creatures or just black creature, whatever. Like they just go over the top. If you let them do their thing, they will just draw more cards than you and kill you. So being able to do like, yeah, the Urza Saga stuff is super sweet.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said about just uh just making your opponent force your opponent to respect you. It's like they have counterspell in their hand. What are they going to do? Tap their mana? No, they're not going to do that. So you're forcing them to play at a space where they get uncomfortable because you're acting in the end step in a deck that isn't traditionally meant to do or taking advantage of that.
Yeah, they just want you to tap out every turn with your big dumb idiot, and they'll counterspell it and go, haha, now I'm going to deploy my threat. And you actually were like, I'm just going to sit here and continue making constructs until you do something. Oh, what's that? You're dead to my 7/7 artifact that's punching you to death. Like, come on, take your game actions. And then, yeah, you're the one that can then swords to plowshares or dismember whatever, and keep punching on. And it looks like you've got a few pieces of your hate here in this this match. So you sided
Carpet
in
is
the
so insane. Carpet's so
yeah.
insane in this spot. As you can see, I imagine that Cody probably wanted to get the swamp, but that swamp sucks. Like that swamp for him really hurts because he just doesn't have double blue. You can't double spell. It's really costly, in my opinion, getting that swamp really early. I know that Kyle Gibson has some thoughts about it as well. But yeah, Carpet just basically just free rolling like 1 mana here. Obviously, it did nothing in turn 1, turn 2, but as we'll watch with this match, it can generate some serious velocity, and it forces Grixis and blue-black players to play differently because they're obviously terrified of what's going to happen if I have 7 mana.
Exactly. And this is what we were saying before about like your Trinispheres and stuff, is like forcing your opponent to have to think differently. They can't just fetch up their underground sea and then fetch, not that they're playing 8-point moons, but in general, like against Grixis or whatever. Being able to just like fetch up their default land and then default land number 2. Like they can't autopilot. They have to genuinely think about what they're going to fetch and then realize that they fetched incorrectly 2 turns later when they can't double spell. And that means that they're sat there with like a daze that's going to return a tapped land to their hand and take them off like a huge amount of tempo. Can't cast their Baraglyph, and you're just punching them to death.
And you can see the Carpet here obviously giving me the 1 to just play around the days.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like a genius when you do this stuff?
I'm the literal best player in the room.
You're the best player in the world.
It's unbelievable.
I think Brayden had a moment like that in one of our previous videos as well, where he's like felt like an absolute champ playing around days, and it just jams his 4-mana spell into the days he knows about. Anyway, yeah. Looks like you haven't done that here, and you.
I'm pretty confident that 2 turns later, like a turn later or whatever, I'm pretty sure I just confidently play into the days because I want him to pick up the hedge maze.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, well,
that makes sense. That's
island,
a calculated thing, right? Yeah. So like here, you've chosen to. Cody has just flipped a.
He's cast his feed the swarm on the Urza Saga, yes.
Yep, and made the comment that he doesn't care what the outcome of this game is from here. He has won the moral victory, and you don't care about moral victories. You care about real victories. So.
Yeah, it's obviously awesome to kill an Urza Saga, but it's just not where he wants to be in the spot. Like obviously the Saga's going to bury him one way or another, so getting it off the battlefield is awesome. But yeah, under pressure from Selesnya, which is the best card or one of the best cards in the deck, especially in these matchups.
Yeah,
and I know that's Tezzeret as well.
Yeah, it's the new Tezzeret. So what are your thoughts on the new Tezzeret? Has it breathed a little bit of life into the deck?
It's super fun to play with. First and foremost, it's a great card. There's no denying that it's got good legs and breathes a lot of power in an individual in one individual card into the deck. Gives a lot of lines. Obviously, spoke briefly about getting Portable Hole into the main deck because of Tezzeret, which comes up a bit, but it's super good. It's hard to justify how good it is in terms of everything else in that is unpointed. We're sitting here talking about Tezzeret. On the other side of the battlefield, we've got a Barragoyf. We've got that Reanimate sitting at 1 point already. We've got Urza Saga sitting at 1. Like, it's surrounded by powerful cards, and it itself is obviously a powerful card. But how powerful it is it's an interesting one. We'll wait and see where it kind of folds out. Obviously, we see in Melbourne that it is doing some pretty unfathomably unnice things in Storm, and it's obviously fairer in shops, but it's awesome. Like, it's fun to play with.
I'm not gonna tell you that it needs a point or anything. I thought the card is super neat when my friend borrowed this deck the other day for one of your monthly tournaments, his first ever Highlander event, and he made it to the top 8. Watched him playing against Mulch, and he just played like a turn 1 Mana Vault, cast his Tezzeret, untapped his Mana Vault, cast like a Trinisphere or something afterwards. Just said your go. Just like these kind of things is yeah, I think it does some really neat stuff, and yeah, I don't know if it needs a point or if other parts in other decks need points. I just think it's a super cool card, and I think yeah, bots, yeah, it's a bit underrepresented at the moment. Maybe this is a kind of card that can help keep it sort of like get it more popular. Who knows? But like you're using it right now. What are you kind of thinking about tutoring for?
Well, I have to get a 1 to play around the days. I believe I just go get a Mox Opal here. Trying to build up my Metalcraft count to just turn it on. Because obviously I don't have 3 artifacts in play now, and I do just want to keep up this relic because, I mean, whilst Cody's got a back to basics in play, he just doesn't have mana. Like, he's got 1 swamp. He's effectively on Dismember or Bust, and so I can just not really do too much until that comes into play. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're happy to just slowly draw some cards, accrue a little bit of value here and there, and you have the clock. You have the Thought-Knot Seer there banging on his door, and Cody's not really doing much to stop that. So he's got a few things to jump through. Meanwhile, you're just sort of playing your mana, forcing the days. He gets to pick his land back up, put it into play tapped.
Yeah.
Not where you want to be for Cody, I think.
Yeah,
I guess you feel pretty comfortable now.
Yeah, tough spot. Like, obviously, yeah, it's a tough spot for Cody. He doesn't have that kind of start that he wants, where it's like Psychic Frog or some kind of pressure. The Thought-Knot Seer kind of breaking up the stock up hand, the stock up side of things. It's yeah, it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with where we are.
Yeah, I
Despite
think
my lands never untapping.
yeah, I think this is kind of like the Rorschach meme of I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me, with this back to basics. But you kind of need to do it, I think, when you don't really have that many things in your hand to, I guess, once that Thought-Knot Seer hit and you were able to take the stock up, his actions kind of get a bit limited. I guess maybe also underestimating the ability for bots to play through these kind of back to basic effects, because you do have the artifacts that tap for mana.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not free. The thing about back to basics in this Blue Moon deck is it's not free. like playing the Darkslick Shores and the Hedge Maze and stuff, they have compounding effects. Like, yeah, you want to get the mana in your deck, and obviously you want to have blue black on turn 2 for a multitude of spells, but that's going to bite you in a matchup where back to basics can potentially be good, or someone can potentially exploit it, i.e. putting a creature into play before you can have defensive speed, as we see here. And I'm not sure what I think I make an error here because I've obviously sacked a Relic and then believed that I could get 5 to play the Golos that I drew, but I obviously can't tap the Moxo.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I guess there is a tension there, but I think you probably lose to the Overlord if it comes into play, whereas here you just sort of just need to figure out where you're going to get your next mana from. And I guess
Yeah,
crack the Tezzeret to go find a random 0 or 1 drop artifact so that you can do it next turn. Like just finding a bauble or something here.
probably get Vault.
Yeah, a Vault puts you up mana. But yeah, I think you just have a lot of options here. You have no pressure coming from your opponent. Is this the sort of kind of game that you get into against this sort of blue-black deck, or I guess like Jund to a lesser extent with Strip Mines and Blood Moons? Do you find that you end up in these kind of games where you're like playing over the top of those effects with your artifacts and still getting the win pretty comfortably?
Jund is a little different because Jund doesn't play kind of counter magic the same. Like, they play a different game where they're proactive in nature, not reactive. And proactivity is a lot easier to play against. I can go over the top of Jund, so to speak. Obviously, the land stuff is, the land draws are difficult to beat without exactly, excuse me, without exactly like the talismans and opal draws and things like that. But it's to prove it, yeah, because
Let's pack it up. Yeah.
but yeah, I find that the Grixis stuff when it breaks down, because they slow down as well. So if they can slow down, we can slow down as well. And as you said with Carpet of Flowers, there it it quintessentially did so much work in stopping the days and allowing me to play the Thought Not Seer on time, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's absolute pleasure to see bots putting in work. And is this the deck that you're going to be bringing to Sydney if you can make it to the Winter Lotus?
Definitely playing the Lotus. I'm flying up Saturday morning. My lovely wife and I have booked tickets to go see Rufus Du Sol on the Friday night.
Oh, that's a banger.
Which is a banger and was booked in, as my wife happily reminds me, was booked in before the Lotus event was announced. So
yeah, it's a little side
we will
quest for you.
yeah, we'll
Lotus.
be we'll be red eyeing that bad boy. But now looking forward to it. Playing a lot in my time off, sharpening the knife a little bit. Made some alterations to the deck already. But yeah, we'll see. We've got a points announcement. We've got a bunch more Highlander to play. We'll see where we end up, but you can be 98% sure that I'll be attempting to put a shop in play.
Awesome, that's so cool, and I look forward to seeing your results and potentially even playing against you on the day. So, thank you once again for joining us, and it's an absolute pleasure as always. Do you have any final thoughts on the deck, or sort of happy there?
Deck's great. It's fun. Highlander's great. Highlander's fun. Come play Highlander.
Come play Highlander at POG every month for the monthly events. There's not many left. Your chance to qualify. If you haven't,
yeah, we've got 3 left, and then the event, or two left. No, 3 left. 3 left, and then the big one. So yeah, it should be good. But even if you're not in the hunt, just come play Magic, because yeah, Highlander's great and the community's
Magic's
great.
The gathering.
Magic's
That's
great.
what we're there for.
Hello everybody, how's it going? Thank you for watching the video. Much love. Can you, if you haven't already, give this video a like and subscribe. It does help us a lot. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support we've gotten recently, and yeah, hope you liked this one.